So the disadvantages straight away is that it's more work, right? So there's more work for our team, which we're in a bear market right now. Resources are limited, and we've got a lot of moving parts that we have to manage now until we can actually effectively expand the team. But that really depends on how those launches go on different chains too. So that's one of the disadvantages is just the lack of resources and the time investment that we will need to put in, which basically has to have some other things we were working on put on hold until we get these other Pangolin indexes launched. That's one of the disadvantages. The other potential disadvantage is confusion. So I did say before that we're going to be launching a different token on each chain, and I explained the reasoning behind it. And to me, that reasoning makes sense, and it has to be trialed. Nobody, as far as I know, has trialed this properly. So we do believe it will empower each ecosystem we go to. However, it will confuse a lot of people because a lot of people are used to either one or two tokens that are linked to one project. Most people are not that used to hearing about one name, one brand, aka Pangolin, that has multiple tokens. There'll be a PNG on Avalanche, there'll be a PNR on Near, and there will be more to come on different chains that we go to. So that might be a little bit confusing for people, and that level of confusion because of the fragmentation is a disadvantage. It has to be considered as a disadvantage essentially. However, that doesn't mean that we can't solve that. I think that in the future we might see the space going more down the compliant route. And when I say compliant route, I mean you might see securities pop up where that are linked and connected to the revenues of the company that's behind or running these different protocols. So I'm not saying that this is definitely coming, but what we could see is to solve that disadvantage eventually in the future when Pangolin is on as many chains as possible, we could create one encompassing token that could act like a security that collects all of the revenues of every chain's trading volumes and other business revenues that could be paid out as dividends or factored into the growth of the token price. But that would have to be on a regulated exchange that can sell securities. So that's just kind of giving you the disadvantage, but also sharing how we can solve it. If I think about other disadvantages, the other disadvantages of going multi-chain is that you could invest a lot of time and resources into another chain, and maybe something happens to that chain. Maybe it breaks, maybe it doesn't work. That's always going to be a possibility, but that's part of the advantage actually also, because the advantage allows us to avoid being just on one chain that potentially breaks or something wrong with it or has some downtime, so that even if it was just a case where there's some downtime, at least our users could still trade on Pangolin Index on one of the chains. So it actually improves our liveness. So that's some of the disadvantages. When it comes to advantages, just to repeat, compounding the community by tapping into communities that are emotionally attached to different systems, empowering those other systems, those other ecosystems, those other chains by hiring people that are super passionate and emotionally attached to those chains to run the decks. That way, it's not a bunch of guys that come from Avalanche running the decks, which some people might have a problem with and might think that we're just trying to extract value, and that's not what we want to do. We want to provide value and improve everywhere we go. And then the other advantage is in terms of our DEX as a service product, when we have this integrated in as many applications and websites as possible, whoever integrates it, their user will be able to trade and have access to liquidity on any chain that we're on. And that's amazing, right? So then the other advantage is we increase the revenues. So we increase the revenues of all of Pangolin, the whole organization, because now you're getting access to trading volumes not only on Avalanche, but trading volumes on Near, trading volumes on whatever other chains that we will launch on. And that increase in revenue means that we can not only figure out a way to reward our holders more, whether it's through a security token or another clever way like buybacks, or we can figure out a way to use our treasury arm to invest in early stage projects that potentially grow in value long term. And those investments could potentially also be shared with the community. These are just some of the potential advantages that we could see in the future. Then the other advantage I mentioned before, if one chain goes down, we don't have to worry because we're on multiple chains. So we've got a better sort of liveness guarantee as a DEX. So the Pangolin brand, if Avalanche broke, which I doubt it will ever break, but let's say it did, right? Then we don't need to worry that Pangolin's going to go down with Avalanche. And as much as we love Avalanche and always will, we can't only rely on one system. We need to ensure that our organization and the community involved will continue even if one chain goes down. The other advantage is that when you go and you build and you compound your community, more opportunities come out of that because your team expands. And so, because we're using a sub DAO model where it'll be each chain will have its own DAO with its own governance, that means we could have essentially a whole pangolin meetup with all of the different DAOs. And the value that could potentially come out of that in terms of the exchange of ideas could help us to really ramp up innovation in the space. Because I know for a fact that our team are very much in line with the idea of improving the world, not just making revenues, not just making people yield, but actually improving the world, using the revenues for a meaningful cause. And I've discussed this with Justin. So we definitely want the future of Penguin to be the vision, I guess, to be much larger than just some AMM that provides yield, but to actually be a positive force in the world, a brand that everybody recognizes for being a positive force in the world. And that only comes if you build out a really strong community of people that are freely exchanging ideas. So that's another advantage of us going to different chains. The other advantage, right? This is a clear like degen advantage. If you've been holding PNG this whole time, staking it, you're going to get access to all these airdrops. And it won't be just one airdrop or two airdrops. There's going to be a bunch of airdrops for the different chains that we go on. So if you've been holding PNG, you've been a loyal staker, you will get access to the PNR airdrop on Near. And as we go forward, this may attract more holders of the token even on Near, because if they're holding the token on Near, they may get access to the airdrop on the next chain that we go to. And we might even build in a way to track if you hold both tokens. So if you hold both PNG, both PNR, then maybe you get a higher multiplier, a higher amount of the next token, and so on and so forth. So I think that's another advantage just from a degen perspective. It's not the thing we're most excited about, but I'm sure there's lots of degens that might listen to this and be like, "Ooh, yes." So yeah, just to encompass it, to kind of go back over the advantages, more guaranteed liveness of the Pangolin brand. The Pangolin brand is expands and is gets more exposure, so people become more aware of Pangolin itself. We build more partnerships, more friendships, more relationships. We increase revenues through trading volumes and other revenues like the super farm program that we do for use for co-marketing. We improve the DEX as a service because it becomes a multi-chain service that web applications can integrate to help their users do swaps and do whatever else that we provide. And what am I missing? Oh yeah, and then the airdrops for holding the tokens as we go into multi-chain, you get access to all those airdrops. And then the expansion of the team, bringing in more great minds into the team that allow for the free exchange of ideas that potentially act as a precursor of innovation in the space. And then finally, and I hope I'm not forgetting any here, but finally, um, empowering the ecosystems that we go to. So not going there to do a Viking attack, not going there to do a vampire attack, going there to empower the ecosystems that we go to by providing value, increasing liquidity, bringing a large brand to certain chains